Hello and welcome to another Tuesday Talk with Ruby Reese. My name is Killian. I'm co-founder at Ruby Reese and I will also be your host. This week, both Chris and I at Ruby Reese have been thinking a lot about lifelong education and learning all that there is to be learned about different aspects of the dog world. And I know that a lot of you listening in are certainly similar types of people and really enjoy learning new aspects about the dog world and are hungry for information, and that's why you're listening in to benefit from loads of the brilliant speakers that we are so lucky to have on this podcast every week. This week's guest is definitely one of those. It is the amazing Nicole from Furry Paws in Galway. And on top of the great work that she does in Galway, she also organises some really interesting events and seminars with some of the top names from the international dog world to come across to Ireland and do live sessions and seminars and conferences here for our Irish dog community. And I had the pleasure of attending one of these conferences a couple of weeks ago and meeting Nicole and also the guest that she brought across from Germany, Simone Müller, which many of you will already know that name. And it was an absolutely spectacular weekend, a 2-day event that both Chris and I learned so much from and were engaged from beginning to end. It was absolutely fantastic. So absolute thank you to Nicole for organising that. And it is also worth pointing out that many of you will also know the name Michael Shikashio, who is coming to do another event with Nicole in May of next year. So that's the 24th and 25th of May 2025. It may sound like it's very far away now, but I'm sure as Christmas time is creeping up, many of you will be putting that on the list to Santa. So if you're interested in finding out more about the event that Nicole is hosting with Michael, all about aggression in dogs and how this can affect our overall training of our dogs and our lives with our dogs, you can find direct links to that information in the show notes, as well as further information, of course, about Nicole and Furry Paws. So without further ado, it is now time to introduce the topic that we chose for this week, because it's not just all about aggression, but we decided to pick the super important and probably slightly heated topic of using muzzles with our dogs. Nicole, welcome to the podcast. Thank you very much for coming on and joining me.
Thank you for having me.
How are you doing?
Good. Yes, just relaxing here with my friends.
Very
And you,
good.
obviously.
Thank you for coming on. Would you do us the pleasure of introducing yourself briefly?
Absolutely. So I am Nicole Hanniffy. I own Furry Paws Galway. I am a pet dog trainer. And a man trailing instructor. And I also hold reactivity group walks for dogs that are learning to walk past their triggers in a positive way. And I'm also hopefully going to become a behavior consultant in the future. So.
Brilliant. Thank you very much for that amazing introduction. And you picked a brilliant topic, one that I've been really excited to talk about for ages. So no better lady to come on and talk all about muzzles. Will we start off with the basics and just kind of explore maybe what the most common situations are that a dog might need to wear a muzzle?
Absolutely. So besides the regulations of restricted breed dogs needing to have a muzzle on out in public, I would say definitely, in my opinion, most dogs should be muzzle trained. And that's just because if they have vet visits, the dogs could be nervous, they could be unsure of people touching them, multitude of reasons. And it's just basically for safety. It's for safety for the dog, it's for safety for everyone else in the room. Um, Also, if there's an emergency, so say there's a car accident, and the person that is driving is not able to take their dog out, if the dog is already comfortable wearing the muzzle, then someone can come and put one on and take the dog to safety as well. So there's just a load of reasons that are good for dogs to really be muzzle trained. Um, and like I said, I think that really all dogs, it should be part of their training kind of process. So along with loose leash walking and sit, stand, sit, stay, everything like that, we should do just be comfortable with something around their face and someone coming, at them with that particular item.
And I suppose that's such a good point, and I have to come out with an admission of guilt here that we left it so long with Ruby to do the training, and then in the most stressful moment when we were moving from Germany to Ireland, we realised we were going to need to take a ferry, and one of the requirements for the ferry to get onto the beautiful island of Ireland is that your dog has to wear a muzzle in all public areas on any of the ferries. So,
Yeah.
of course, in a stressful time where we were packing up one house and trying to open up another house and move during COVID to a new country, we had to also go through muzzle training with a Frenchie. So I have to say, brilliant point. It's a great idea to be prepared for any upcoming scenarios because you'll never know when you need it. Uh,
Exactly. Yep.
and I suppose, like, okay, so some people might see the safety purposes, and we mentioned some of the other situations that dogs might need to wear a muzzle. But can it also be used as a training tool?
For a training tool, I like to look at it just as for safety and just being able to open up the dog's world. So
Hmm.
really, the dog's world is only as big as we can make it. So if that means that a dog who is nervous and might air snap at, a trigger or something like that, if they can wear a muzzle in conjunction with their training, and their reactivity training, or just getting comfortable in that environment, then that really is the main thing. I'm I'm a pet um, dog trainer, so I wouldn't really. I'm not 100% sure what you mean in training. Like I have seen it in, say, like IGP, where the dog needs
Hmm.
to say hold on to like a sleeve or something like that. I have seen in the States people would use muzzles for that type of training. Um, but I would just look at it as like a positive thing and just say that it's really for safety. It's for your dog's safety as well. Because I think too, a lot of people now we're misjudging what breeds dogs are because we have so many crosses of breeds.
Hmm.
And if someone looks at, say, like, one of my dogs and says, "Oh, that's an XL bully," she's not, but the stigma comes around it. So it's really just for safety and to open up the dog's world and to allow them to be in an environment that they might not necessarily be in without that protection there.
Yeah, amazing. And you mentioned stigma, which is, I think, something we really need to tackle as well. Like, how do you handle that stigma that people associate with dogs wearing muzzles?
Yeah, so as humans, we don't like change, I think. I think we kind of go against it at first and then we kind of ease into it. So I think the main thing that I tell most of my clients is what other people think of you is really none of our business. But always, you don't have to be, you can be polite and just short when someone asks. So I have two 40 kg German Shepherds and I walk them with muzzles on, and people say, "Oh, wow, those dogs are aggressive." And I just say, "Oh, well, it's just for our safety." And just keep walking. So if we really just keep the answers short, and positive, and don't try to get into disagreements with people about why they should be wearing muzzles or not, um, I think it's a topic that definitely should be brought into schools as well. I noticed that, like, if a lot of children ask me, say, oh, why do they have that thing around their face? I just say, oh, it's because it keeps my dog safe. And they seem to appreciate that answer, and that's good enough for them.
Hmm.
And they move on. So I think it's more of the kind of old school feeling that only dogs who are muzzled are going to basically, tear something apart. And that's not true. Like we said, it could be a multitude of reasons. I have a dog that would literally eat anything, and I mean like anything. So if she can wear a muzzle that would protect her from getting a stomach ache, then that's perfect. I can now bring her out into more places. For restricted breeds, I do man trailing with
Hmm.
one of my dogs. So he wears a muzzle, and now he can go in an urban setting and he can do man trailing there. So um, for the stigma, I would just say keep educating people, educating them on the positive side of it, really, and just say that, it opens up so much of the world to our dogs if not only are we keeping them safe, but we're keeping you safe as well.
And actually, talking about it, do you think that some of these old school concepts of the muzzle, do you think there's the change is kind of coming and creeping in slowly?
I think so. Yeah, I think we're seeing a lot more trainers who are including that in their repertoire of just skills, and people are giving out, free muzzle training. I think a lot of the rescues now as well are muzzle training dogs before they go to their forever homes. So I think it's just the more people that use it, the easier it is to kind of accept it, which is really, it's a positive thing as well. So yeah, hopefully it'll be a faster movement than some of the things that we're used to. But yeah, and there will always be kind of pushback. We do have there are a lot of owners who say, well, I'm not going to muzzle my dog because then he can't protect himself, and whatever. And for that, um like, the thing is that, we're really in charge of protecting our dog at the
Hmm.
end of the day when we're out. So if we can just get past that kind of, oh, I don't want to do it because somebody told me I had to do it, thing, I think that will end up in a more positive note about the muzzles. And not only that, but now there are, like, so many different kinds and so many different fits. So I think too what a lot of it was back in the day. There were really a lot of the muzzles didn't fit correctly,
Hmm.
so a lot of the dogs were uncomfortable. So it might have made it look like, to the owner that the dog was just really uncomfortable and it wasn't a good thing for them. But
Hmm.
now, if you get a correct fitting muzzle on a dog, and like they come in every single color and every single like material that you can think of, um, I think people are like, it's more of like a kind of a fashion thing. They're like, oh, well, if I can get, a green one that is very lightweight, and, that's half the battle as well.
Yeah, and I've questions about fit in a second, but I want to just circle back a little because I was just thinking when you were saying, that people sometimes think, oh, my dog can't protect themselves, but realistically, if your dog bites someone on the street, say if that happened, or out in a public space and it goes to court, your dog is going to be put down by the court. It's like that is the reality in Ireland. At least it happens really, really often. So I think it's worthwhile seeing, what's the bigger evil here, that a dog can't snap, or you're probably looking at an owner that's really doing the very best they can to protect their dog, regardless of whether they bite or not. And I'm not saying they do.
Exactly, yes. And that's the key point there as well, is no matter what your emotional state is about the muzzle, the law is that if your dog is restricted breed, or if
Mhm.
they are a bite risk to another dog or a human, then they should be muzzled. So I think we need to kind of put our emotional state just on the shelf there for a little while, and really, because it is happening quite often where, and I think some of the reactions are kind of knee-jerk reactions as well.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
but at the end of the day, there is nothing that we can do if your dog bites another, bites a human, and there is a court case. So yeah, I think it's just kind of, we need to just reel down the
Yeah,
emotional
just
and take the,
reimagine what the muzzle could look like. And you also mentioned some really interesting pieces that I've seen recently. You know, you mentioned about dogs picking things up along the way. You know, lots of listeners will know that I live in Cork and go to the Marina Market quite a lot and other markets around. And we like, us humans love to eat things that dog might not be very good for our dogs, you know, like really spicy foods, lots of onions, you know, even things that for example, our Frenchie Ruby is allergic to, like chicken and turkey. These end up all over the place at these markets. People might remember back to the pandemic where dogs would pick up anything and everything, like discarded masks, like tissues, things like that
yeah.
off the ground. So there's so many use cases out and about for using a muzzle that could be really positive, right?
Exactly, yes. And that's really just like exactly to circle back around. It's really for safety, and it's not an easy way to do it. Obviously, there's training involved and obviously
Yeah,
the stigma of everything. But at the end of the day, you're saving yourself €300 vet bill
yeah.
by just simply adding that. Like, so when you get ready for your walk, you have your harness and your leash. If you just have your muzzle as well, if you
Mhm.
need it, it just becomes part of your daily routine, really.
Absolutely. And we see lots of more and more dogs coming out and kind of flying the flag here with all the nice coloured muzzles as well, particularly the greyhounds and a lot of guys that go out in public a lot.
Yes.
They tend to be really, really good for, you know, changing the stigma around muzzles. But you mentioned about the colours and fits and size. So how do people find the right model of muzzle for them? And you know, how does fitting work?
So there are a few ways to do the measurements. A lot of people say put a tennis ball in the dog's mouth and measure from there. That's if your dog is able to hold that and not, jump around. There are fitting guides for different companies as well. So if you just go online, you can look at the different measurements for different breeds. I personally use Gap muzzles. So they have, because I have shepherds, so they have male and female German Shepherd size, as well
Mhm.
as a few other breeds. Um, I think they have Rottweiler and they have a few breeds there. But there are loads of companies out, and if you just reach out to them, they can tell you, if you just measure from nose to bridge of and things like that, then they can just make a muzzle based on those measurements. For me personally, when I train, I just get one of the ones that you can get from the pet store. So kind
Mhm.
of it's just like a plasticky one, just because I use a lot of treats and I use peanut butter, so I can get it disgusting and it doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
Um, but like, yeah, I would say just definitely there are different companies for muzzles that would have like a closure over the front. So for scavenger dogs, different ones that are fully closed for dogs that might bite, and then different ones for dogs that are, just need them just because sort of like restricted breed dogs. So, but definitely get correct fitting measurements, and the dog should be able to eat and drink water and pant fully. So, like,
Mhm.
they should be able to open their mouth completely. And stick their tongue out and everything, and not be stressed. And I find that some of them too, they kind of squeeze like a little bit on the side there. So if you just check that as well, they should have a little bit of space. So it's really more like it's really like an addition. It's not like a glove fitting. It's just an
Mhm.
addition that goes over. And there are loads of other things like the straps that go over the top if you think that it might fall off. There's like loads of accessories now and things, like it really is becoming kind of like a fashion statement, which is great, like I think. But yeah, the most important things are get the measurements right so that it's not squishing the nose, so that it's not tapping off the bridge of the nose either, because that can be uncomfortable for some dogs. And the most important thing is that they can drink water and they can pant in full.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. And then how do we go about training the use of the muzzle? So you already mentioned peanut butter. Is that used in the
Yeah.
training of using
So,
the muzzle?
uh, so I, so yeah, I start out with like a plastic container. I can show you if you want. I start it with a plastic container. If the dog is not used to having anything around their mouth, like you can get a yogurt container, or anything like that, and
Mhm.
just anything that's sticky. You can use liver, paste. You can use peanut butter, just to get them used to having that around their snout.
Mhm.
And always, treats, obviously, who doesn't like treats?
Yeah.
So that's always a good association with it. And then what I do is after that, and they're used to it, then I transfer the muzzle into the container,
Mhm.
and then I put the treats on top of that. So now they have what we're using and what we already know, and we kind of have combined it. And then from there, we can put it to cue. So we can have them, I just say muzzle, and then my dogs kind of stick their nose in it, and then I give them a treat outside of the muzzle.
Mhm.
So it depends on each dog how long it'll take really and how comfortable they are. But what you want to do is you want to move slowly. And if at any time the dog is uncomfortable or just looks like they're not sure, you can just always go back to the container part and just start over from there. But once they are used to actually having their snout in and they're happy with that, then you can start putting the strap over their head, because that is a different feeling as well. So you just pop the strap over their head, pop it back out, give them a treat. Um, and just work up your duration from there as well. I usually only train for about 2 minutes at a time. So we're
Okay.
not we're not doing it all day. We're just doing quick, positive. And when they do pop their nose in, you can just say yes. And so dogs usually like that affirmation, like they're like, oh yeah, this is great. But yeah, slowly. And then always, what I usually do as well is I start everything from inside. So I
Mhm.
start training inside my house, and then I go in the garden, and then I take it outside.
So
So just
you're just building up positive associations gradually, first of all with the muzzle, and then bringing, upping, I guess, the difficulty level with different distractions. Is that right? Like by going out
yes.
from inside to outside.
Exactly, yes. So if they can do it inside, then
Hmm.
they can do it in their garden outside. That's a different environment. And then you can
Yeah.
take them into even the bigger world, and go from there. And if at any time, it's like any kind of training. If at any time they're uncomfortable, or something gives them a spook or whatever, you can just go back to the beginning and start over again, because it is something that you want to be positive. Like when I take out the muzzles and I put them on, like my guys are out the gap. They don't care that it's on. They're just, okay, we're
Hmm.
going for a walk. Thank you.
Yeah.
So we don't want any frustration around it or anything. Um, and sometimes like dogs aren't sure. So I have a dog who she's a bit nervous about new things. So what I do is she does like to play. So I kind of took the muzzle at first and I was like, "Ooh, what is this?" Like, and kind of played with it, and moved it around. And then if she touched her nose to it, I gave her a treat. So I'm not stingy with my treats when I'm training. I know like a
Hmm.
lot of people are like, "Oh, don't give them too much food." But if you just think about it, I can just cut out a little bit of, her normal food for that week or
Sure.
whatever that we're doing it. And that way, like the higher value reward is what she remembers anyways.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, so that's another thing. I think sometimes we forget, just to reward the dog for doing something new.
Hmm. And I just wanted to ask as well, I guess you're trying to reduce the amount of stress and anxiety a dog will have around a muzzle when you're training it. So you have to really go at their pace, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. So my Chihuahua, I'm actually muzzle training him as well, because even though he's 3 kg, he can bite in certain situations. So, um, it's a his nose is like this big. So for me to even find anything for him to go into, that's number one. And then he's never had anything really over his head, so that's number two. So we just take it as slow as he wants. If he ever puts his paw up and tries to, take it off, that's it for the day. We can do
Mhm.
something else and create a positive moment out of that. But yes, we don't want any stress. We don't want the dog to feel like you know, that they can't get the muzzle off or that it's not coming off. Because it's just basically used for that amount of time that we're doing that specific task, really. So
Mhm.
yeah, it's not a race to get muzzle trained. So which is why it's great to add it in when they're young. If you have this in their toolbox when they're young, they're just like, oh yeah, even if it's a year later or whatever, and then you bring it out again, they're like, oh yeah, we did this and that was okay. And then they're more relaxed around the tools. And sometimes as well, like I just take them out and I just give them treats around the muzzles just to keep that association that like when you do have this on, like good things are going to happen and it's cool. It's just part of life.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm guessing as well, there are certain other things like if a dog isn't extremely treat motivated, if they really want belly rubs or they want your attention, you can probably bring some of that in as well if that's going to be the reward, right?
Absolutely, yes. So you can bring in, say, like rope toys or anything like that. If they have a good out, you can play with the rope toy and then say muzzle. And when they do, when they put their nose in, then you can reward them with the toy. Same thing. One of my dogs, she likes attention, so she would prefer a hug. So if she does that, I can just say hug, and then she'll come up, and that's her reward. So you can use anything that motivates the dog, and they'll remember that bit of it as well.
Yeah, definitely. With everything to do with dogs, it always comes down to the individual, doesn't it?
It does, yeah. And having four dogs myself with such different like personalities, I'm always like, what can I do that is good for this one? So like one dog might be like completely food motivated and then look at a toy and like, what do you want me to do with that? But like the other one might be like, I don't care what you throw at me, I just want that ball. So yeah, it's exciting as well. It's kind of a bond building thing too. I love using games to train. Like I
Mhm.
love being silly and I know that they're not judging me. So I can do whatever it is. I can throw the muzzle up in the air and then I can like put it on my face and whatever I want, whatever works.
Yeah,
And
keep it
makes it,
exciting.
yeah.
And once a dog is fully trained and fully comfortable with wearing a muzzle, are there any maximum amounts of time that kind of even as a guideline, you would say is the most a dog should be wearing a muzzle for?
Yeah, so I would say for as long as the activity is going on. So, for example, if you're going to the vet a few minutes, while you're in the waiting room, during the exam, and then if they need to calm down after, you can pop them in the car as long as you're supervising.
Hmm.
If you're out on a walk, a few hours is fine as long as they can drink and can pant as well. Um, I would say definitely don't leave it on all day. I have heard of people saying that they muzzle their dogs while they're gone to work. I don't think we should really be doing that. I think that's a different management tool that they need to use. But yeah, definitely just for as long as the whatever it is that you're doing is going on, and then after that you can just definitely take it off and give them a break from it.
Yeah,
It's
probably
not really
comes down to comfort and safety, really. I suppose as the crux of it.
exactly, yeah. Safety is the main thing. Anything can happen and should always be supervised as well. Like if the dog does happen to get stressed or whatever and goes to take off the muzzle with their paw, like if say their paw gets caught in it and you're not at home, like, so it should always be when the human is there, and
Mhm.
just for the duration of the activity that you're doing.
And I suppose we've spoken about a lot of different situations where might be a really good idea to muzzle your dog. And apart from when your dog is alone, are there other situations where using a muzzle might be harmful or in any way inappropriate with your dog?
Um, I would say I have heard of people trying to use it as like a deterrent for barking or something like that.
Hmm.
It's not really a deterrent for barking. Some dogs are meant to bark to alert, so
Hmm.
it's not really a training tool in that sense. So I would just stick with the basics. Vet visits if they are scavengers, and if their bite risks are restricted breeds. Other than that, that's kind of we're going into like a different management type of training.
Sure, yeah, absolutely. And I suppose to wrap things up, are there any other misconceptions? I know we spoke about quite a few of them, but are there other misconceptions that we need to clear up as well about muzzles?
Yeah, just that I would just reiterate that muzzles are not only for aggressive dogs. Just because a dog has a muzzle on it doesn't mean that it's going to automatically bite you. It just is for safety, and we can have fun. We can do the same things that other dogs are doing, and as long as they're comfortable and you're comfortable, then there's no problem with wearing them. I think they're absolutely a great addition, and it really has opened up the world. I can now take my dogs hiking, where places I couldn't have gone before, so I can take them, out in the cities and things like that. So it's a positive movement, really.
Yeah, definitely. And there's so many situations where it could become important. So it's sounds something we should probably get back onto it with Ruby. It's been a while since that ferry journey. So
I
it
can
would be
send you some tips and some videos if you'd like, of
would
how I
very
do the
much
training.
yeah, would very much appreciate that. Thank you so much, Nicole, for coming on and tackling such an important topic. I really hope that that's helped lots of people listening in. Thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you. I really appreciate it.
Thanks a million.
Brilliant. All right, we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you. And once again, a huge thank you to Nicole for joining us on the podcast this week. If you'd like to find out more about what Nicole gets up to at Four Furry Paws, please feel free to check out our show notes where you can find all of her social media handles and indeed her website. You can also find tickets to the event that I mentioned in the intro with Michael Shikashio, which is all to do with aggression in dogs' behavior, and that's going to be a really, really interesting event that will no doubt help our whole community considerably. You can also, of course, find out more about Ruby Reese by checking out the links in the show notes or by heading across to ruby-reese.com. Thank you so much for listening in. If you have not already done so, please follow or subscribe to our channel wherever you're listening to this podcast. And of course, tune in to another podcast episode that we'll be bringing out just next Tuesday. Thank you very much and have a lovely week.